boxes, buildings, but when you walk into the building and the fountain's in use and a few nurses are sitting there chatting, having their morning coffee, it was very relaxing, and it was just a nice space to walk through.
Sure. Look, I guess a question that we'll want to work with different city officials and groups on is, does an interactive fountain make sense? Is it better to be a decorative fountain, as you're talking about, that existed where people congregated around it, heard it, listened, saw it, but didn't necessarily get in it? That's a question. That's a fundamental thing to think about. Is getting in it important or looking at it more important?
I think it's a nice to have thing, but I think given the winter weather here, a large portion of the year, I would rather see you invest the money in better fenestration, better windows, and the brick than that. Great thing to have, but I think the details in the facade are more important.
It's a fair comment.
Another way to look at it would be to harken back to the facts of the old well that served the stockade starting in the 1600s. Very simple bluestone square round hole in the middle, but some echo of that might be a simpler way to provide a water feature.
Well, so I'll give you a couple examples because, again, I think of this as it would be a missed opportunity. I said we were in Montreal last night before the concert outside the Place des Arts. We sat by the plaza. Guess what? It had a water feature exactly like this. We sat there for almost an hour just enjoying the fountain, watching the change in the dynamic, the change in the lighting, and the way children and people interacted with it. So it's a very different dimension from simply a fountain. Where I live in Burlington, City Hall Park, Kevin Roche isn't here tonight, but he made a comment to me after the last meeting about how much he likes Burlington. Church Street, which closed the downtown Main Street, by the way, something I'm hoping you consider. Into a pedestrian mall, did it in the late 80s. It's won all kinds of awards for urban space. But next to the City Hall, they're renovating the plaza. They're taking out a more static type fountain. It was a stone round fountain with, I'll say, a rather boring water expression, if you will, replacing it with an interactive fountain. It's under construction now. There are people that objected to the project more because of trees that were coming out that had to come out, even though we're planting more trees than were there to begin with. Should be completed hopefully late fall this year. But those are also much colder climates. So if Montreal, Quebec City, and Burlington could do it, I don't see it from a weather or climate standpoint certainly being a problem for Kingston. But your point's well taken, Hayes, something to think about.
And that's something that can be determined during the site plan approval process. Picking the exact fountain right now doesn't change the secret proceeding, but the feedback is important for us to gather so that we know a direction to go and research. And Patrick just sent me this picture just to show you. This is in Poughkeepsie. So this is on the top of a parking garage at the Culinary Institute. It's not to say that we want this fountain, it's just to show this on top of a concrete structure with parking underneath could actually be built.
All right.
Can you go to start with slide 11? I know you're showing three different options on this view. Can you speak to that? What's your thought process?
Sure. So we're open is the short answer of what colors this should be. I think all of them articulate a very similar material. It's really just a change in color. There's a little bit difference in the size of the exposure, I think, on one of the clapboard sidings, but we're also going to be working with Benjamin Moore to try to see what were historic colors. We have no idea what color this building was. The only photographs are black and white, and we have no written record that we can find of what color it was. So that doesn't mean we needed to copy whatever it was, but we need to find out, we need to agree on what color it should be. And so we're going to present several options and ideas, and we had time to do a few of them. All the same scale, just, you can see this is a larger exposure and different color schemes. So, Steve, do you want to describe the thinking, or is we're just really presenting other options?
Again, demonstrates how powerful color is as a tool. And I think at the end of the day, we'll defer to whatever you can find in the historic record for what the colors were. I think that's going to be difficult. So having said that, we'll just come back to, from an aesthetic standpoint and historic precedent standpoint for the Stockade District, what you feel is appropriate. Maybe look at other examples of the same vintage building and see how color was handled in some of those clapboard residential structures. Probably, I don't think there's much in the way of commercial that is like this. So that may be a good place to start for precedent as far as color, even though we can't find specifically what was done here.
Is there one that, I mean, I don't know if you want to do a show of hands. Is there, not that it has to be that exact scheme, but is there one that you would rule out and say, go more in this direction and we can do variations of that?
Wow.
I mean, we have 1, 2, or 3 at this point, and we can take 1, 2, or 3 and do variations of it, and then come back with some more options. They're all pretty different. So you have a lighter siding, a cream, white, gray, white windows, gray windows, red windows, or and there can be a mix of any variation thereof.
My thought is that the color scheme of the building immediately next to it is black and white. I would not want to see that replicated.
Right.
I think you would want to have some contrast. Of the colors that you're showing, the idea of carrying a color scheme so that...
Yeah, the gray with the gray, that was...
Right, that's one possibility with yourself, or the red on the other side of the street. That also directly across from you is the Senate garage, so that either of these would be picking up on context. I always defer on colors to other folks with a more artistic eye than mine, but of what you've shown, 1 or 2 would be more appealing to me than 3.
Okay. Anyone else have an opinion?
The only question that I have, and just from a planning board member standpoint, we've heard a lot of comments that have come in, and I've had people that have approached me, and this really isn't my forte, but I feel like we're trying really hard to replicate something, and I know the SHPO letter came in, and they really didn't comment too much on this as having much, I guess, appeal or effect, but we've had projects from the planning board that have come through where SHPO has said that they don't want us replicating history. And I feel like this building, just the way that the porches in the front and the soffits are, that we're trying to recreate this old hotel. And I know we've had other projects in the city where we tried to recreate things and it's backfired. So since we have new design and more modern designs to the left and in the back and on Schwank Drive and an industrial building, is this color scheme and this type of detail on this porch, is this gonna go? And I kind of defer to the historic boards because I don't.
There's one.
I mean, I just don't know if I'm okay with the box, but I don't
Right.
know if the outside, I don't know of any architecture uptown where this matches. And SHPO really didn't
There's
give us
$1
any
million
guidance.
for us to do it like this. We want a grant to do this. So if we
Okay.
don't do it similar to this, it hurts the economics of the project severely.
And that was just to do it in that,
Colors to be determined, but in this type of
and
look,
that wall
with
went
this type
through
of finish.
SHPO.
It went through, it's a state grant.
State grant,
So
okay.
it went through SHPO. I don't know, there's a lot of people in SHPO. I'm
Yeah,
not
no,
sure
that's fine.
who in SHPO sat on the committee that approved the historic tax credit grant that we got, but this is a historic grant.
So it has to mimic the footprint and the facade of the old building as much as
To a
possible.
point. I mean, it has to have, it can't be confused, so we have to have a different keystone that'll say 2021, so no one would think that this is the historic
Right.
building, but it has to pay homage to it with detail and scale and size, and otherwise we violate the grant, we lose $1 million, and we don't do the project. Oh yeah, we can have several color render, we're just looking for feedback. Right, right.
Now,
Yeah.
with your original building, because I know your original building was brick facade, is there anything behind that brick? I
The
mean, is
original building, this was the original building.
The original building was wood, then they put brick on top.
Right.
You- But what, so as you start to deconstruct this building, are you going to get back to what this original wood was? or
There's
is that long
nothing
gone?
behind it.
Oh, there's nothing behind. Okay,
These columns are probably the only thing other than the roof structure
That's
that's
left.
still actually there.
okay.
Buried in a wall, exactly. So we want to pull these columns out and actually reuse them where you see the columns on the future building. The building is similar in height, et cetera. The walls have moved a little bit. The windows have changed a little bit. The cornice work is going to be redone similarly. But if we took the brick off, there's nothing there. It's just brick.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so there's unfortunately we went through this discussion. There was no way to save the existing building from a structural point of view.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
I just didn't know if there was evidence behind. the
No,
brick.
there's no evidence. These columns are the evidence. We found it. But nothing else that we can really take out and save. And these are painted, by the way, they do have some red paint on them. So the red didn't come out of nowhere, but we don't know when that red paint was put on.
I would just like to say the gray was my least favorite.
Which gray?
The new,
the third one?
Yeah, the third option.
I kind of agree with you. We had we didn't get to see this much. We saw it today, but we agree. This was our least favorite.
That's my least favorite.
Agree.
I like the cleanliness of this one, but
I
I
do
think
too.
the red is the most interesting to me. It kind of, you have a lot of brick color interspersed,
Mm-hmm.
especially now, even though this doesn't face Schwenk, it kind of ties that in for me. So if you're asking us to pick, this one would be my preference.
Okay.
Actually, the red is toned down from the original. It's more of a rust reddish brown. That's one of the differences
Yeah, I
in
wouldn't
this
want to see
version.
like a candy apple red or anything
Right.
like
That was
that.
the original.
Candy apples, probably a
That would
fair
not
fair
be-
term.
That would be not good red.
That's the brighter red that was originally there.
Yeah.
That's the one that I've had issue with because it's just so.
Right. And oops, I'm sorry. And then this is
Came from the columns.
right. This is the toned down red.
That to me is better.
Okay. Great. Thank
I
you.
want to speak to that too. I think I wrote down that color number 1 was my favorite. I love this whole view. The back, I love the brick building. I agree. I took the same note about the windows that Hayes was talking about on that, and I understand the money parameter of that. I still struggle a little bit with the blue and the gray of the building on Schwenk Drive. I'm
This-
embracing this a lot more, and then when you come around to the other side, everything they're saying makes sense, and the trees and the green space.
Oh, you're talking about the blue in
The blue and the gray on the back, again, that's just personal preference. I love this so much better, but the back I struggle with. It feels so medical to me.
We haven't
almost.
touched the back. That's going to
And-
change. So
That I like. I like the grays are better with the brick. There's one that you have blue on. I'm not a fan of that, but
the blue in
it's-
here.
it just feels medical to me and not Kingston, not
Okay.
Uptown or so. And I understand that
Right.
the historic on one side and everything they're saying makes a lot of sense. That's just for the 2 cents worth aesthetically. The blue I struggle with, and the kind of medical feel of what I saw before. But I like the brick on the bottom, and I like the trestle. But number 1 was my favorite. It's my
Okay.
2 cents worth on the color.
you're hired as a color consultant, if that's okay.
Closer to the color of your sweater.
As you pull that photo in, I see corrugations appear on the outside of the, is that just an aspect of the computer program? Or is
No.
it?
That's going to be actual corrugations on the building. It's a vertical treatment, like a board and batten kind of, Steve, or no?
Yep.
Is there
Board
a
and batten, it
reason?
could be metal panel, which fits an industrial warehouse type aesthetic. So we'll see, but it's also something that introduces some scale to it, not just a flat, monolithic facade.
I'm only aware of one board and batten structure in the historic district. It's at 124
The house.
Green Street.
Yeah.
The Thomas Edison visited here house.
What's the reasoning behind the lines on this going vertical instead of horizontal?
Pardon? Oh, board and batten? It's a more commercial aesthetic, less of a residential. You know, clapboard, to me, is a stronger residential kind of aesthetic. To me, these are, even though it's multifamily housing, I think it needs to have a more commercial kind of aesthetic for the cladding on it because of the context and because it's not single family. So that's just kind of our instinct.
I think it's all ties in with the theme of the story that we're trying to tell of an old building that's been converted. And if it was horizontal, which is quite frankly easier to do, I don't know if we'd accomplish that, but we can certainly draw a version of this in the computer with horizontal siding. I'm not an architect, I'm struggling with the right word, but I think it'll conflict with what we're trying to accomplish with the direction of punched openings and a converted industrial lumberyard looking warehouse building.
But this is interesting. These are exactly the sorts of things we want to hear about and discuss with you, okay? Because this is all part of the evolution. We want you to be invested in the process and frankly take some ownership of the outcome, because we like that, but frankly that's how it should be anyway. So we understand how important this project is for really everybody. So I just want to make sure it's clear. I think it is, but we hear what you're saying. We want to continue to have a dialogue, and this means as much to us as I think it does to everybody in the community. So we all want a success.
I'm really happy with what Steve did here by bringing the cornices down. I agree, we can change this blue out to a different color. But just the way, I feel like we're in Kingston when I see that. And I don't know if you guys feel the same way, but...
I agree with that.
Yeah, the cornices are a real feature of most of the district, and so I'm happy we discussed that at our meeting as well, so thank you for that. The other thing that I'm struggling with still in your design, this is going to now become a welcome to Uptown Kingston. This is going to be a major vehicular and foot traffic access to the historic district that it's been a minor one sort of up till now, and we're really directing a lot more people to it, and I'm hoping that with the plaza you can strengthen that sense of entryway, and I think that would be an opportunity I haven't heard you focus on yet, and I would be happy to see that.
Yeah, I agree. The plaza design in and of itself is its own subset of work. I mean, getting past this stage, which is seeker, are we doing this project? Is this the right project for here? Is the first step. The next step will be detailing this out and working with, several iterations, as we're doing with the architecture now, to lay out exactly how this plaza functions and operates. But this walkway and this entry and then the ramp up, that starts to tell the story. And then along the way, there can be literally cues, signage, changes in materials, things that give you a feeling that I'm walking into the historic district from the plaza.
I agree. It's an excellent opportunity for welcoming people to what makes Kingston a little different than any other place on the planet.
So there's a couple opportunities, Mark. First of all, you have to recognize how people arrive. The majority, I think, are going to be coming by car. So by definition, that's not, an historic, let's say, way to arrive. But I think there's an opportunity with that approach coming up Fair Street for how we design the entry, if you will, to the space below. That's why we have the skylight. I don't want it to be a dark hole.
Right here.
I want the light to come down as a backdrop. That backdrop is an opportunity for something, maybe a commission, an artist or something to do something as some sort of, a story that maybe you want to tell about Kingston, whether it's site-specific or more general, but there's an opportunity. The way we designed that entry, you know, needs careful study, because it should be more than just entering a parking garage. But that's one aspect of the arrival, and frankly, it's going to be the more common. The other, of course, again, is what we're saying about the pedestrian bridge. There may be some way as you walk along that to likewise tell some sort of story, because not all of that is going to be storefront or commercial. There'll be some blank wall opportunities there on one side.
In here.
And I did
Right.
want to note that what you're showing for the wall along Schwenk Drive, I'm glad to see it's not just a flat concrete wall. I think that the stone,
Oh, the stone base, yeah.
yeah, is a chance to highlight what they're walking into. With, I mean, no one can expect you to recreate Dutch-era colonial stonework, but something
No.
that calls to it the way this does more than what you've presented before is an improvement that I'm happy to see.
Okay, good. Appreciate the comments. Other thoughts, comments?
Do any of the other, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay.
No, I was going to ask if any of the other team members wanted to, did they?
They're
is there
shy.
anything in- Okay, that's good.
When you appeared before us, you had Joe Diamond with the archaeological information. That's something that's particularly important on this site and not one that I know the planning board typically gets into. Is he going to be making a presentation as part of the seeker review before the planning board as well?
He submitted his recommendations, and we spoke about that at the last planning board meeting. So basically, there are certain areas on the site that are important to explore further, and we will be doing that. That's the gist of it. We don't know what's left down there because it's been built on twice before, but as part of our initial construction phase, we will be exploring that, and Joe will be there as we dig to identify any and all artifacts that are worthy of preservation. So that's a commitment that we will make. It'll be part of the hopeful negative declaration that this board will write, and you will decree us to do that, and we will do it. So there's not much more of a presentation he can make other than to say, this is a sensitive area and we need to look at it further, but digging up the parking lot now before we know if we have a project or not doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Okay.
I've been meaning to mention that it would be great, from my point of view, to leave the plaza open enough to see the mountains behind
Yeah,
it. I
you
don't
will.
want anything blocking those mountains.
And that's a great comment because it'll talk about how we lay out trees. So instead of having a tree in the center, we can push that to the side. And I completely agree with you. One of the reasons we got rid of the glass atrium was to continue to preserve that view shed through there. And by laying out the plaza in a thoughtful way, with a goal of keeping that view shed in mind, then we need trees, but the trees can be justified to both the right and the left, and then to keep the center more open for a view shed. I think that's a great comment. We're fully on board with it. There will be a landscape architect that's going to do this design with us. It's just too early. The idea of, are we doing a plaza? Are we doing a bridge? Is this project happening? That's what we're getting to. If the answer to all that is yes, we pull the trigger on the next round of design, which will be part of the site plan approval.
Anybody else have any comments or questions? Steve, thank you for not taking too much offense at, I think we butchered your original design up there.
Well, I don't have any more hair to lose like you,
Okay.
Wayne, so not a problem.
To that, it's not offense. We needed direction.
And I know
And part of
that.
the direction we got in the beginning was spend your attention on North Front Street, don't worry about the back, break the back up into a whole lot of little buildings. Okay,
Yeah.
that's what we did. Then we got more clarity around a direction, and we changed it.
It's healthy. It's a healthy discussion. That's how it should be.
And it's give and take on both sides, right? I mean, I might have missed it along the way, from when you first started talking about this project, why the Kingstonian, that one building had to remain as it is. I didn't know that funding, was part of that issue till tonight, so.
In order to pull this project off, we needed a lot of funding streams.
Yeah.
And the DRI funding some of the public amenities, meaning the walkway and plaza, the historic tax credits funding the rebuilding of the hotel, and that, quite frankly, that's one of the reasons why there's a hotel. It'd be easier to make more apartments, but the hotel rooms are needed as well, with a Senate garage across the street. So it all kind of comes together when you find a funding stream that matches one of the goals of the project. So,
As you get down to the site planning and stuff, though, given the budgetary constraints, as you face those, it would be very helpful for us to understand, what you're looking at trading off this for this,
Yep.
so that we can give some insight into, collectively, we'd rather see you focus on this investment than this.
and you did some of that tonight, which we appreciate, with smaller fountain, more architecture, makes sense. It's an iteration, as Steve says, and I've learned this from him working with him on several projects now. You don't just say, here's the design, go build it, or go get it approved. It has to iterate, and you have to, it's a lot of work, but you end up with a better project. And I think from where we started out 2.5 years ago to now, I think you'd all agree is significantly improved.
Yes.
And all three groups don't get together that often. I think this is the second time we've had such a meeting since I've been involved with the planning board. I think it's wonderful that we're able to do this and have you just make one presentation, so we're not playing the telephone game. Well, he said this at my meeting, and he said this at my meeting. So I think it's great that the applicants can share their thoughts and what their plans are with as many interested agencies as possible. So I thank everybody from all three boards who were able to make it here tonight for that. I think we're one step closer to the end game here. And we have a little ways to go, but I want to thank you for sharing this tonight with us. And does anybody have any other questions at all right now?
I just want to ask if you can forward to our department the full presentation so we can upload it to the website.
Sure. I sent the images right before we came, but not the full presentation, so we can certainly do that. I just had a couple questions, I guess, for you guys. One of which is maybe more of a housekeeping matter. We talked a little bit about the traffic. Is there...
Well,
I know that was an issue that was outstanding 2 weeks ago.
There's was an invoice now has been prepared. We have a firm that we've contracted out with, and they're aware that we need to have this done in an accelerated manner. So that's in the works right now. That's already been done. So.
Okay, so the third-party firm was hired to review the study that we did. Okay.
Yeah.
Terrific.
Yeah.
In terms of what more you need from us in order to give us your recommendations, and maybe Mike can speak to this because Mike's done more seeker projects than me by 100. What more do we need to present to you in order for you to give us in writing the direction? I mean, we know we're not coming at the end of seeker with a finished building. We will have the finished building at the site plan approval, which we're going to go right into. But what more do you need to feel comfortable to say this building and this development, as Steve said, it's not just a building, this development meets your satisfaction?
I think at this point, we're just waiting on the traffic review of the work that Creighton Manning provided.
And I mean, and also we have, we do have that letter from SHPO. They want us to be, involved and back and forth with them. And
we'll send them these pictures.
They're going to send them these pictures and what we've talked about tonight, and see what they have to say. So
we'll write a formal letter responding to their comments and how we think that this new design goes along with what they had to say for the most part.
Right.
Not in every way, because again, the one thing we fundamentally disagree on is needing to keep Fair Street Extension open. I mean, imagine if that was open, you'd be staring at the side of a parking garage, and there'd be no pedestrian plaza, and there'd be no businesses there on the pedestrian plaza. And the people would be interacting with the cars that are coming in and out of the garage. I don't think they gave that enough thought. And I think if we were to go with that recommendation, that's the one that I disagree with mostly, we'd be missing a big opportunity for Kingston. We'd save money, but we miss a big opportunity.
So I think those are that's it, right? I mean, yeah. I don't know if Mike, you have anything to say, Mike, or? Take a mic, Mike.
The only thing I was going to ask was, with respect to seeker, at the last planning board meeting, we had suggested that we would fill out a part 2 of the EAF and submit it to the board. There was some discussion about that and never really a resolution about that. Does the board have a preference for us to do that or not do it? I mean, I would think that would be the next step now. With respect to SHPO, that issue with the letter is still certainly open from a seeker standpoint, so that this board, as the planning board probably knows, but just to elaborate on it, it's a coordinated review process that's going on now, so the planning board is the lead agency. It must make its own environmental findings, even with regard to the SHPO issues. So those issues have to be made public, and they have to be made by the planning board during the pendency of the seeker review. And part of the part 2 has a specific list of questions that address the SHPO issues and the historic issues and cultural
Right.
resources.
As I had stated at the last meeting of the planning board, I don't have any objection. I don't know about the other planning board members, to you drafting.
Yeah, and it would
And
be a
then-
draft with suggested
and-
answers. The
And
board
then
absolutely has to do
We will
their own.
review it thoroughly and potentially make whatever changes we deem appropriate.
If that's okay, we'll get that in a draft form.
Okay.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
That's good with me. I'm not in charge, though.
All right. So all 3 boards are going to have to table this matter. We're going to start with planning board here. At this time, I'll make a motion that we table items number 2 and 3. Do I have a second? Second by Robert Jacobson. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried.
I do. Do you have a quorum? We do. All right. So on behalf of Historic Landmark Preservation Commission, I move that we table further consideration of the Kingstonian project as listed as items number 2 and 3 on our joint agenda tonight. Do I hear a second? Thank you, Andrea. All in favor? Aye. Unanimous passage.
Heritage, do you have to? Okay. Okay, I hear you. All right, before we close out here, just want to let you know that Planning Board is going to be getting in contact with you to arrange a special meeting in October, okay? We'll continue on that. So anyway, that's the end to it. So thank you very much, folks.
You have to adjourn? Second. Adjourned.